Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Fantasy Football University FFU, coming at you yet again in the off season, leading into the Super Bowl week. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mr. Bill Koussis. I'm here with Mr. Tom Lang. Mr. Lang, are you happy, sad, excited, not excited for the Super Bowl here?
We'll see. We'll see. Honestly, there's not many years that I've always rooted for like the Patriots to win, but this is one year that I actually would like to see the Patriots win.
I'm
And
I'm surprised after our whole business talking about the whole, the Broncos thing and then basically gifting the Patriots basically into the Super Bowl. I thought we would have been all behind the Seahawks to just go and decimate them
no,
for karma reasons.
well, they didn't gift the game to the Patriots. They gifted the game to the Bills, which was a whole bunch of BS. And then the Bills, and then the Patriots was able to pull that one off. So,
Right, in the snow with Jared Stidham, etc.
yeah. Well,
It
nobody was playing well except for the defenses. So I
well,
think
that's
the better defense came out and won. And
eh,
in a snowy tundra of Denver, it just literally came out of nowhere.
yeah. Yeah, basically at the end of the third quarter, and then it turned into, look like Jersey.
Complete snow globe.
When they did it. I think if Jared Stidham, after they got, first of all, again, we're going to get into at some point over the offseason another controversial topic about coaches who don't play right. If Sean Payton just takes that field goal there, and then the rest of the game they hand the ball off every play, I think Denver wins the game. But I'm not going to second and triple guess it at the.
I don't think the refs would allow that, to be honest.
Oh, we're
So,
getting back into that again. Oh man. People be asking us some of the comments from our situation on that whole thing, and we went into detail. Look, you and I can have a disagreement, even me and or you or other people could have a disagreement, but like, don't bring up an argument that we addressed in the conversation and then be like, "Yep, no, that's our argument." No, no, we addressed whatever that argument was. Don't bring it up as if like we didn't actually, address it back and forth to the thing. Case in point, cognitive dissonance. Sometimes it really doesn't work the way that you guys think it works, the way that the hits and the misses, but we don't have to beleaguer that point. Do you think that any shenanigans is going to be at play in the Super Bowl, or do you think that they're not going to do that?
I would hope not. There's enough shenanigans already in the Super Bowl, so
Uh,
let's hope that we actually have a good game that everybody's going to thoroughly enjoy it because it could be really unenjoyable really quick if they decide to pull some stuff.
again, I just want it on record. I don't believe any of that stuff happens, at least in modern day NFL. It doesn't. Okay.
Okay.
But we'll move on. Well, let's
We
get
could
to
go
the
down the rabbit hole a little bit further next time.
We could very well go down the rabbit hole. All right, so let's get to a quick preview of the game for fun before we jump into our main topic. So we got the Seattle Seahawks at the New England Patriots. The Seahawks are favorites minus 4.5 points, and the over-under is 45.5 points. I don't know if it hits that number, the 45.5. But I do think the Seahawks win. I think they actually destroy the Patriots here, but I know you might think otherwise.
I think the Patriots defense will step up and make Sam Darnold make some mistakes. So, um, especially with Ken Walker being the only running back there because Charbonnet is out for the rest of the year. Um, it's going to be interesting.
What's the final score?
I actually think it's a low scoring event. I think it's like
Hmm.
a 17-14 game, to be honest.
Sure.
I think both defenses hold the offenses in check, and I think that Drake May uh, drives the field at the final to and then basically they kick a field goal to win it. So I think it's about a 17-14 game, and or it could be a 21-20 game to take the lead with the kick or something like that, whatever. But
So we
yeah.
both think it hits the under at the
Yeah,
very
I
least.
think, I think you'd feel pretty confident putting some money on that under total points.
So before we jump into our main thrust of the show, let's just touch upon the bits of news and notes that have happened the last 2 weeks. So yeah, we took a week off, and the last 2 weeks has been a bit of a frenzy in terms of all like the different coaching changes and different stuff that we hadn't actually seen. So
Yeah.
obviously we touched on the whole Sean McDermott situation, and I don't know if I mentioned it on air, but in my opinion, the only way for the Bills to have saved face, considering, by the way, did you see some of the press conferences that their owner and GM had
Yeah.
after that whole business?
And then throwing Coleman under the bus like he was a problem because they decided to pick him. Like that whole thing was out of nowhere. Just like the owner just like was talking about how the reason why they fired him. He was like, well, King Coleman was not a part of the plans and whatever, and we kind of just went with that.
Right.
Like, what was that? What was that about? Just because there was coach's decisions that he benched him for like 3 or 4 games during the season. Like if I was Keane Coleman, I would have already told I want
Okay.
out, like I'm gone, or I'm not playing for your organization again because this is how you treat your players.
Right. And also he was suggesting that he didn't want to draft Keon Coleman, and Sean McDermott made him draft Keon Coleman. And then later on, it came out that there was some footage of like both Sean McDermott and him being like, no, no, like meaning the GM being behind it, like, yeah, let's go get this guy, let's go get this guy. So I guess that's never going to be addressed. Like he'll never have a press conference where somebody could call him out on a lie. Like I want people to get called out on lies that they say.
Yeah,
So
just like, and we call people out on really bad calls and flags, things like that. But
yeah, things like that. But
yeah,
again, if there is a contingent of a gigantic amount of people who don't think the call was wrong, then you can't just get angry that the bad calls are happening because a lot of people don't think they were wrong.
that's not a lot of people. I mean, maybe like you think a lot of people is 15% of people, but
I don't know.
85% of the world believes that there's a problem.
I don't know if you're judging by how many yo-yos complain on Twitter, then that's not a good gauge. Um, Anyway, the Bills circus aside, given how bad the circus was, in my opinion, there was only two candidates they could have actually had to kind of right the ship. It was only going to be Brian Daboll because of the familiarity and the fact he was on Bills, or Joe Brady, which is ultimately what they did. But again, I can't take them seriously for the lies that they say because if their whole problem with Sean McDermott is we need a culture shift, we need a different thing, we need Joe Brady was there, he was on
Yeah.
the staff. Like what? So it's all a mess. Maybe it comes out that Sean McDermott was having some serious disagreements with them, and he should have had because the cabinet was bare. It was Josh Allen, James Cook, and mediocre across the board for the rest of the roster. So.
Yeah.
What a mess. The other coaches that have been filled. So we already mentioned the Robert Saleh situation. We did not mention that Robert Saleh now has Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator now in Tennessee. So I'm feeling decent about Tennessee making a little bit of a step forward next year. Um, so the let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers head coaching news. So
This was for honestly, I will say, with Mike McCarthy getting the deal here and getting the keys to the castle in the Mr. Steelerland. I think Rodgers plays another year. I
I
th
do too. Yep.
I think it's an obvious. I mean, he knows the playbook. He just goes back into the same system that he grew up in. So I think it's a smart move for the organization. I don't and honestly it only could get better. DK Metcalf is being sued $100 million apparently allegedly from the Lions fan that got smacked in the face by DK. I don't think it was worth $100 million. I think they're going to settle for like 5 million. But it's
How do
I
they
think
quantify damages? Like I don't I have no
I don't
idea
know.
how they do that.
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, God bless them. So we'll
He
see.
might just
Well,
have a really bad lawyer that's trying to negotiate something where he's going to only get like a lot less zeros than that.
considering that I think Baltimore is going to be worse next year without John Harbaugh, and I think that Cincinnati still has no defense or whatever else, Pittsburgh might end up winning the division next year again. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see how that one works out. Speaking
I
of
mean, but actually you keep forgetting about the Pro Bowler rookie quarterback that plays for the Cleveland Browns. I mean,
yeah, we didn't talk about that.
yeah, we're actually it's funny, right now on ESPN because this is pre-recorded. Right now on ESPN, Shedeur Sanders is running out of the tunnel with Joe Flacco and Joe
I
Burrow.
know.
So,
I know.
very, very interesting scenario, which I'm really excited. Maybe in the next couple weeks we have the
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders conversation because that is making the Pro Bowl the biggest joke in the world.
So I don't. I just want to quickly comment on it. There's two aspects to that. One is that it didn't matter anyway for the last umpteen amount of years. Like, the Brent Huntley thing is the one that keeps coming to mind in the media.
Yeah, but
Um,
Brent Huntley actually got the team to the playoffs, and he was
eh,
doing
he
he
didn't
was it.
deserve to be in the Pro Bowl. You know
Yeah,
that
but
the only reason he was there was as
Brent
an
Hunt
alternate.
no, yeah, but he uplifted that team to continue to win.
I think you're equating something for no reason. The point is that the only reason this is even a thing is because the people who are getting elected to the Pro Bowl either don't want to go or can't go. And so that's 90% of the problem that we're having, notwithstanding Shador Sanders even remotely being close to it, which is a completely separate issue. But why do we even have the Pro Bowl anymore at that point? Like this is getting ridiculous. I don't know what ratings they're
Because
pulling
the
in. Like,
crazy thing about it is that this is going down on paper for his history that he was a Pro Bowl player. He is not a Pro Bowl player,
but he isn't a Pro Bowl player. He was put in there basically to fill in a slot because nobody else wanted to. That's
but
the
he's
truth
there.
of it.
But he's there. There's other players that could have filled that role. I would rather see Tua Tagovailoa out there than what's his name
Well,
Shador.
Well, this will come to another thing when we talk about it. Like the original, when we get into that episode, it's tribalism in sports. And the idea is that Shador, a bunch of people voted for Shador. And you know that the reason that they voted,
Two people voted for him
what I'm
actually.
saying is a bunch of people, no, a bunch of people voted for him and you know why they did, which we'll get into in that episode. So we won't beleaguer the issue now, but basically the larger issue is that the Pro Bowl means nothing and it has meant nothing for a long period of time. Speaking of things that mean nothing, the NFL Hall of Fame has decided to not enshrine both Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft because of the stupidest voting not just the voting laws itself, but also people who are big fat liars and can't like admit things that they say and then they don't say. But Tommy, I got to ask you this question. Like, do you think it's a failure of people to not recognize lies, or do you think it's a failure of reporters to not call it out, be like, hey, listen, you said this a week ago, but now you're saying this? Like, why can't they just tell Bill Polian, you said you couldn't remember, and then you said, no, no, now I remember? Why can't they ask him that question? Does this is failure of reporting or
Because it's acceptable, and I'm not going to get into how I feel about some of these people that are still working in the industry.
all right. Well, anyway, while we're in the while we're on
When
the
you're
top,
150 years old working in an industry, you know,
I
when you
know.
probably should be in a home, just move on.
Down by the All right. Well, while we're on the topic of coaches, so yeah, in the AFC North, the Cleveland filled in their position into their dumpster fire, awful sinking ship of a team. Todd Monken, the ex Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator, is now the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and he gets to inherit the nonsense that, everything with Shador Sanders and Deshaun Watson, which can't wait to talk about
Good
all that.
luck.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's not going to end well. Arizona got their new head coach LaFleur, and I think it's about the best that they could have hoped for. It's just a question of how they handle the Kyler situation. In my opinion, they should get rid of Kyler and just stick with Jacoby Brissett until it's somebody that they're going to draft or something. But Kyler has basically set them back however many years with their situation. So.
Well, I mean, the coaching situation set them back for just
Ah,
continuing to roll with Kyler
yeah,
Murray.
Gannon wasn't
Mr.
right.
COD was basically just playing Call of Duty all day long and not really giving a crap about his craft, which is what pays him to be able to enjoy playing Call of Duty on the weekends.
Do you think that they like it feels like it was a bit of a departure this year from teams, every team trying to get a hold of their next Sean McVay, and which seems to have been the rage for the last couple of years up leading up to this point. It seems like a bit of a departure from that. I think that would
Yeah,
have been the smart move for them.
yeah. I mean, it definitely would have been. Unfortunately, they just decided to go with some defensive coordinators that's not what that team needed.
Okay. Well, I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, speaking of which, I can't even remember the new Dolphins head coach's name. I know he was the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. And so that's the direction that they're going to go in Miami now. So I mean, God bless them. Again, it's so much rides on the dysfunction of whatever's going on with Tua. So we'll see how that one goes.
Mhm.
I mean, was there anything else shocking that hit your that hit your face in the coaching situation?
No, no. I think the only thing that really like hit my face and just I'm still shocked to this day, especially that it's happening right this second, is the Shador Sanders
Okay.
being inducted into being accepted as a Pro Bowl player.
That really hits you in the wrong.
It does
It just it
because
adds to the
honestly,
whole thing.
yeah, because honestly, I could go out there and throw 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Well, maybe one touchdown and 10 interceptions.
Gotcha.
I mean, you're an underperforming rookie quarterback, which is normal. Things happen like that in a really dysfunctional situation, and you get put into now you're a Pro Bowler.
Right.
That's disgusting.
I just went and looked it up. The head coach's name for the Miami Dolphins is Jeff Hafley. And make sure we start to remember the name because I'm sure we'll hear about it quite a bit. And another quick note: so the Raiders have filled in their head coaching position. That's Clint Kubiak, probably the best that they could have hoped for, part of the Kubiak Shanahan coaching tree.
I thought honestly it was going to be a Indiana,
Oh yeah.
welcome back with the coach over there, and obviously Mendoza coming over.
And the last one was the Baltimore Ravens. They filled in their position with Jesse Minter. So I think I think the Ravens take a bit of a step back next year. Personally, I think that quote unquote, it's the age cliff for running quarterbacks. I don't know if I fully buy that business. I don't like the vibes going on in Baltimore. But
Yeah,
we'll be talking about that
it's too much finger pointing happening over there.
in the off season. So there we go. That's the news. That's the game leading into the Super Bowl. We have our picks. We have everything. You ready to jump into wide receivers here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. We are going to review the final finishers of the 2025 regular season. We're going to be covering between weeks 1 and 17 because week 18 doesn't matter. And for 99% of people, it doesn't matter. Half PPR. Congratulations. That's the most common thing, despite what people tell us in various videos online. So half PPR between weeks 1 and 17. And I want to point out before we jump into the first guy here. So when we brought this up when we were talking about the running back situation, we noticed a number of trends that, it was a really good return on investment for running backs who you were drafting early. Remember, we pointed
Mhm.
out like it was a very, very good percentage, and not just in the top 14 and like the top five and the top seven, etc. It was a constant trend. This differs between wide receivers because there's a lot of volatility there. And so I just wanted to mention, we mentioned the top 14 because that was a good bracket of players for the running backs. In the top 14, only 5 players were drafted in the top 14, finished in the top 14 for wide receivers. That is a big difference from what the running backs were. So I'm not saying to never hit a wide receiver early, but I'm saying that it like unless there's a massive tier break in whatever the running backs you're looking at when you're drafting, no, it's not worth it. So let's jump into the list here, and we'll talk about numbers 1 and 7 at the same time, part of the same team. So finishing at number 1 was Puka Nacua. Finishing at number 7 was Devontae Adams. Puka Nacua and the number 2 guy who we'll talk about was basically the best wide receivers all year. I mean, Puka, he finished with 289 points. He was drafted as the wide receiver 7. Devontae Adams honestly might have even had a better return on interest. He finished with 192 points.
Yeah.
He was drafted as the wide receiver 19, and Devontae missed the last 2 games. So, the whole trepidation around Puka was Matt Stafford's health.
And do you remember the one of the biggest players of my early preseason I was talking about was Devontae Adams. I thought
Yes,
he
you
was
were.
going to have a tremendous year. I
Yes.
was not able to get him anywhere because I was trying to draft him at ADP.
Right. Well, maybe. Well, yeah, and it depends how like the dice,
Yeah.
fell or whatever it was. I mean, you know, it's just Matt Stafford made these guys like. And I'm not saying that these guys aren't talented, but Matt Stafford helped it, and Matt Stafford was fully healthy throughout the whole year. I don't know whatever epidurals that he has to have, but like if Matt Stafford's returning next year, are we going to end up having the exact same conversation? Like, is Matt Stafford healthy enough to support these guys? Devontae Adams another year older. Like, how do we think about the Rams passing attack here?
Um, I don't know. I honestly, I think after this year, if Matthew Stafford does come back, then it will be fine. They'll be fine over there. If I just got a feeling that he's going to um retire.
Uh, then I guess how we think of these guys is going to be completely different. I mean, Stafford threw 46 touchdowns,
I
you know?
know it was an unbelievable year. I think honestly, I could say if the Rams won against Seattle and they went to the Super Bowl, they won the Super Bowl, he would have retired. Like it
I
would have just
agree.
been over. I think it's still close. You know, if he wins MVP, I think he just finishes it because of the back injury. I mean, he miraculously he was able to play a full season without, showing any type of nagging issues. And it was an unbelievable year. So I don't know how you can top that. And I don't think that, I think he'll be, if he did play next year with the same situation, I think he will be fine, but I don't think that um you're going to see the same kind of play.
You're probably right. Do you think Devonte Adams, I mean, he's such a good athlete, but he is getting older now. How much of a step down do you think he takes? A little bit? I mean,
Well, honestly, I mean, you saw towards the end of the year the hamstring and there were some injuries that were
right.
happening. So, you saw their attrition of age happening. So I do think that, he is not that deep threat kind of player. And it made it clear throughout the season he wasn't like really going for those deep balls. He was more of the red zone target, getting opportunities in exactly where he needed to be. And he had that chemistry with Matthew Stafford in the end zone. And obviously when he was needing those possessions to be made if Puka Nacua was not open. So
Yeah, one of the things we talked about, I know we were noticing this. So you were top among people who were falling in love with Blake Corum towards the end of last year,
yeah,
and one thing that we did notice with Kyron and with Blake Corum, there were, let's call it, a less of a touch, just as the LA running backs as a whole, there was a touchdown regression, if you will. Honestly, mostly because of Devontae Adams. I mean, he was just catching so many touchdowns, and
yeah.
Stafford threw 46 of them. Like it was less running back touchdowns on the ground. So we noticed that on with Kyron and to a lesser extent with Blake Corum towards the end of the year. It'll be interesting to see. And by the way, when Devontae went down, they morphed right back into a more of a, double tight end type of running team that we noticed. So I, I'll be very interested to see how we handle this next year. Here's what I hope doesn't happen: that it's not like Stafford says he's coming back and then he like doesn't play in the preseason and we have to make guesses about his health again. Like,
Well, I mean, if he comes back, you don't won't have to worry about his health. I think he'll be fine. But I just honestly think that with right after the Super Bowl, that's what's going to be the decision. We're going to find out who the MVP is, which I still find it insane that we're like trying to think who the MVP is because at one point it was locked, it was done. It was locked up because of the bad game that Stafford had.
uh,
So it's very interesting that it kind of teetered back a little bit. But
I know. I agree. I think it's because it's like you want to give Drake May a little bit of credit for the better record. I don't know. It's a difficult conversation.
yeah, just
Yeah,
like Shador Sanders making it to, Pro Bowl.
just like that.
And by the way, throwing a pick on his first drive.
Very, very good. So let's talk. Let's talk about number two. Um,
Number
like I said,
two.
Puka and number two is JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like they both ran away. They ran away with it by far, by far, by far the best wide receivers. I mean,
Yeah.
JSN finishes with 289 points, basically the exact same amount of points as Puka, but Puka didn't play 1 or 2 weeks there, so per game, Puka was a little bit better. But the deal was JSN felt like he helped you more because he was drafted as the wide receiver 14. So, and this was the one we talked about it earlier in the offseason that we were the most wrong about compared with consensus. We did not see a path for Seattle being that dominant on the passing game.
Well,
It
I
just
mean, I did take the over on their I thought they were gonna get like 9 or 10 wins this year, which not I didn't think they were gonna win the division. But I also know we, like you said,
Not on the back of Sam Darnold.
we
Like,
did
yeah,
not think that this was going to be
right,
this heavy passing game that was going to be able to just win games through the air and blow people out. The defense was the primary opportunity that kept them in better contention throughout the entire season. That defense also was being put together correctly the past 2 years by picking up some players here and there,
right.
and that's what really helped this offense prosper.
I agree with you. They're such a good team. They're such a good team. And honestly, I have no like
The
they're the best team. They're the
Well,
best
yeah,
team this year.
and the one big thing is, and this is this is very high, right? So like JSN was basically his target share was 36%. So that's the highest in the league in a target share percentage,
Right.
right? So like going into next year, do you anticipate it to be the same? It doesn't level out because people will see how he's played and they'll be able to capitalize on basically locking him down. You know, he won't have that same target percentage.
That's
So
a good question, man. What do you think?
I don't think it's going to happen. I
Okay.
think honestly, maybe it's still in the 30s, but I think it's gonna be like maybe 31, 32. Which, maybe Shaheed starts picking up a little bit more on the offense. That's something that basically
He
they
could end up
traded
with a Super Bowl hangover too, like that,
possibly.
it's within the realm of
Yeah, but
here's
you
a
got to win the Super Bowl to have a hangover.
that's true. I have I have a question to ask you on this, and you know how people are, and you know how people think. Like you have Puka and JSN, running away with the field. You think there's like, but people are obsessed with Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Like, do you think rightfully or wrongfully, like
I'd
they
still
should be
take
drafted ahead
next
of
no,
JSN?
next year I take Jamar Chase over both of those guys still.
Still,
Still.
okay.
And the reason, here's the thing, like we said, like Matthew Stafford, if he doesn't play next year, Puka is just a guy. Like he's
I
not
don't
the
think
player
he's just
anymore.
a guy, but he's not going to be worth that.
He's not a wide receiver one. He may not even be a wide receiver two
Eh.
anymore.
I think athletically he's the best receiver in football, but that's my opinion. I don't know.
That's fine. You can believe that, honestly, but you just look at what Matthew Stafford does with one solo wide receiver through his entire career, right? So like Calvin Johnson, fantastic career, even before Matthew Stafford got there, right? Calvin Johnson was the best wide receiver in football when Matthew Stafford was there, right? He was dominant without him there. He was the most dominant wide receiver in the league. After that, after Calvin Johnson retires, Golden Tate comes out of nowhere, explodes off the field, right?
And then here comes Cooper Cup, and then
And
blah blah
then
blah.
Cooper Cup, yeah. So
Right.
he supports the player, and this was an anomaly year. Like this was a year where he was able to support two players that were very consistent and unbelievable, and they stayed healthy. And he was able to maximize those opportunities. I mean, for again, with Devontae Adams only seeing 21.2 target share when he was high 20 target share, his entire career, he was able to produce off of what he was receiving, right? So, I think I temper expectations going into next year, just depending on the situation. If Matthew Stafford's back, yeah, Puka's a great play. He may be the number one wide receiver coming off the board. But if Matthew Stafford's not there, he cannot be a wide receiver one.
Well, I don't know if the same could be said for JSN because we know Sam Darnold is going to come back next year. So that's why it's like you don't care. JSN is still behind guys like Jamar Chase, etc. Like it's
I think JSN would be the number five wide receiver off the board next year, which that's respectable.
sure. And we'll get to, I mean, we'll get to all that. Like, I think that I think at some point, guys who've been
I think
hovering around the top need to
honestly,
take a bit of
I
a
think
tumble.
JSN is where Nico Collins was being drafted this year.
Well, which was high,
Yeah.
but
Which was
well,
high, but it was not. It's not like the number one or number two wide receiver coming off the board. It's still going to be. I believe next year going into it, it will still be. Which one call it? Chase, Jefferson, CD Lamb. There, and then after that, you have Amara, who's consistent year in year out. And then there's other players that we could discuss as the season, the off season goes on.
well, thank you for segueing. Let's talk about number three, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and while we're in the same conversation, we'll talk about number 11, Jamison Williams, both for Detroit. Amon-Ra finishing at number three with 246 points, and Jamison Williams at number 11 with 177 points. So, like we said, Puka and Jackson Smith and Jigma lapped the field. So a tier break there, and then finishing at number three was Amon-Ra. And
Mhm.
Amon-Ra, you talk about consistency, right? He was drafted as the wide receiver four and he finishes the wide receiver three. He's been like the wide receiver four for like the last whatever 4 years now,
And
something
that's
like
what I'm
that.
talking about.
So consistent.
Consistency is the most important thing with fantasy football. Barring any injuries, Amon-Ra is always going to command the target. He's always going to command the rock.
You
He's
can't
going to
mess up
score.
with Amon Ra, right?
No, you can't. And he's going to have those massive, massive games. Now, he did get hit with the injury bug this year, but he still played through it, right?
He absolutely,
Unbelievably
absolutely.
played through it. Isaac Tesla should have had a 50-point game
It
that week.
was it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and by the way, I think the Jamison Williams situation does nothing except help Amon Ra, actually. The fact that you're having more weapons doing
Yeah,
good
because it
things.
opens the field. And
Right.
honestly, I think they're going to have a better situation next year with the
I do.
offensive coordinator. Yeah. So I think
I,
they're going to be able to open the field, be able to move the ball better. I honestly think going into next year, Jamison Williams is going to be a top 24 wide receiver, and he'll probably finish close to where he finished this year.
Yeah, well, Jamison Williams, like we said, I mean, he finishes the wide receiver 11. You drafted him as the wide receiver 28. That's probably not an accurate assessment of his
And
year, though,
the
because
wild thing about it, though, is that he had under 100 targets on the season.
right, he did that with what he did, right.
Hmm.
Um, but he wasn't good basically up until let's call it the bye week. I mean, he had maybe one or two good games up until then, and then after that, he just completely exploded. So
Yeah.
it
And
was,
here's a stat that basically, and just like I said, having only 94 targets throughout the season, he at number 11, he was 18.6 target percentage, right?
mhm.
So 18.6 target percentage between those numbers, he was AJ Brown right at number 10 was 28.2, and below him Zay Flowers was 28.8. There is not another guy with that low percentage outside of T Higgins until you get to like top, let's just say low, you get to 29, Troy Franklin, 18.3.
Right.
So it's it's very incredible the the amount of talent that Jameson Williams has. And obviously he's a fantastic talent. He came from Alabama, fantastic player, underrated, I feel, honestly. And I think he's a better version of whatchamacallit on Philadelphia. Devonta Smith. I think he's a better version of Devonta Smith
I think he's complete.
when when on the field and healthy and moving.
I think just it's a weird comparison to make. I think he's just good in his own right. He's good as his own player.
Well, they're
Um,
flyers. They're both flyers, but I think Jameson Williams is more elusive with his catches, and he actually can make something happen down the field, and go up there and get it.
One thing we talked about this offseason that I'm in full agreement with you was the whole David Montgomery situation. So if the Lions, let's call it part ways with David Montgomery, they are likely to be using all of the other weapons that they do have, which are mostly in the passing games beyond Jahmyr Gibbs. So if they're electrifying their pass game, things are going better, and they're making improvements on what they did last year,
Mm,
then I'd be very, very high on these tertiary options for Detroit. And that does include Laporta, who I'm sure will not be going nearly as high as he did in the draft that he did last year.
no,
So a good year from Jameson, but again, didn't happen until the second half of the year. And that's notable considering that that's when the head coach took over play calling duties. So maybe, and he's still there and they unlocked him. So we'll
yep.
see how they handle that. Let's talk about number four, George Pickens. Unbelievable, unbelievable. This was one of the best values in the draft. Finishing at wide receiver four, you drafted him as the wide receiver 26. Um, do you think he hits that mark if CD wasn't in and out with injuries this year?
No, no. And the problem with this is that Dallas is going to have to pay this guy. He
Should
was
let
on a
him
one year.
go.
Yeah, they could let him go. There is a lot of chatter about maybe potentially franchising him, which I believe George Pickens doesn't want to do.
Of course, nobody
Um,
ever wants it.
Nobody
Yeah.
wants to be franchised. But I'll say this, right? If they let him go, maybe he goes to Buffalo and does well there
Right. That would
because,
be their G
because Keane Coleman will not be on the team next year.
And by the way, that would be their GM actually doing his job that he hasn't done for the last 4 years. So,
Yeah, and then
uh,
when George Pickens is yelling at referees and picking fights with players on the sideline, he still has to take ownership in signing a player like that.
I think the Bills should go and get a certain wide receiver in Jacksonville, but we'll get to that at some point.
Yeah.
So
BTJ.
yeah. So
Or
anyway,
maybe AJ Brown, instead of him reading books on the sideline in
uh,
Philadelphia,
oh,
he could be catching balls from Josh Allen.
by the way, we're gonna get to that whole AJ Brown thing at some point in the offseason, but we've already talked about this about players that we don't like. Joe Burrow's at the top of my list. AJ Brown's a very close second of
I'm
players I
thinking
don't like.
about joining his book club.
Yeah. Oh, the sarcasm that people will not know that you're bringing. So, I wanted to say one other thing about George Pickens. So we could say anything we want about CD Lamb, and I wanted to get your opinion of this. I was going to wait until the next show, but I guess I'll just mention I think CD Lamb might not be at the top of his game anymore, personally speaking. I got it. There was some injuries and other stuff in there. Um,
I don't agree
s-
with you.
you disagree with that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think there was just too many hands in the pot in that offense, to a point like where, you know, what's it, Flannery was
Flournoy. Flournoy.
Illinois was catching a lot of balls and
Fergalicious.
taking away. I mean, Ferguson, I was not anticipating to have that number one season that he had week in, week out early in the year. But we did discuss that he was a nice pick for a recurring guy
Sure.
late in drafts. But back to the wide receiver element, I do think that I think he's still got it. It's CeeDee Lamb. He's going into year five, I believe. He's only 26 years old. So, he's got a lot of time he's got a lot of time left. One, two, three, four, five, six. He's going to year seven. Sorry. Um, so I do think with the healthy Dak, actually, and we got to remember this, Dak's train is coming to an injured season this upcoming year.
Right.
So
We
maybe I
base our
have to
fantasy analysis on red light, green light.
maybe yeah, this is a red light year. But
We'll
maybe
see.
he breaks that trend and the CD Lamb, has a nice year back to back.
If George Pickens is on this team, I have a feeling we'll probably rank him in the top 24, but we'll have to see how angry George gets with being franchised because we'll see. We'll see what Jerry Jones does with him. Maybe he'll pay him at the last second like he does with every other person not named Micah Parsons. So,
He'll pay him Ezekiel Elliott money and then
and then regret it after the fact. Yeah.
yep.
So let's talk about number five. This is going to be a convo. So finishing at number five is Jamar Chase. You drafted him as the wide receiver one, and he did not feel like a wide receiver one for first third of the season. And
No.
then Joe Flacco, and then later on Joe Burrow come back, and then he did. And here's the deal. I don't know if he is the best pure wide receiver in football, but I know that because they have absolutely no defense in Cincinnati, and Joe Burrow has to prove his point with money by giving Jamar Chase 70,000 targets a year. Therefore, fantasy wise, I
Yeah, I
kind of
mean,
agree with you to be
against
like,
against Pittsburgh for 23 targets,
I know, but
16 receptions was unbelievable.
I just have to take an aside here. They're the architects of their own demise because they have the entire money of the entire salary cap in just those two players. And the thing is, they could just go on and be like, "See, look how good we are," because they're the only two people who are good on the team. And so it's like it's an endless circle. It's a
Pump the
self-fulfilling
brakes on me. T.
prophecy.
Higgins is really good,
And including T. Higgins too. Three people have their entire salary cap.
and Chase
So
Brown's about to get paid.
with what money? They have no
Which
money left.
Joe Burrow is going to give him his Batmobile.
We'll talk about that more in the off season, but I do think Jamar Chase. It's going to be. I agree with you. It's going to be very hard to not draft him as number one wide receiver
Yeah,
next year. Very hard.
with
Um,
a plethora of targets year in, year out. I
I
mean,
know,
he had 175 targets that led the league in targets this year.
right? And anybody could get injured. I mean, Joe Burrow got injured. You could draft Jamar Chase number one, and he could get injured. But it's going to be hard to not just assume he's the number one.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's not much to say. He was just great when Burrow and to a slightly lesser extent Flacco was there. So that's it. Let's talk about number six. We've got Chris Olave. This is maybe your favorite name on this list.
Olave.
Drafted as the wide receiver 34. So finishing as the wide receiver six. So him and George Pickens were among some of the best values that you could have gotten all year. Um, so Chris Olave, we said it for the first, half of the year, like go trade for this guy. If no other
Hmm.
reason, he's just a target monster target. Like the points were not being commensurate with the targets that he was getting. And then at some point, Tyler Shook figured out like, yo, I'm a good quarterback. And Chris Olave takes off. Chris Olave had an unbelievable second half of the year. I mean,
Yeah. And
look at
I
that.
will say this, in our analytics in our conversations that we had early preseason about, talking about draft strategy, there are four players in this top 12 that we
Absolutely.
said go get, and they were not first round draft pick players. You
Absolutely.
could had all these guys on your lineup, and you could have won your leagues very, very easily while also taking two running backs to start the draft.
Well, George Pickens and Chris Olave was among these names. I mean, we
Yep.
were we were very good on them. I'm not going to say, we were 19 spots ahead of what the consensus was, but we were higher than what consensus was. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I have really good feelings about Chris Olave for next year. I told you my favorite player in fantasy football this past year was Tyler Shook. I'm feeling
We
good about the
just
Saints offense next year.
we just gotta hope that, because Chris Olave didn't have the injury bug this year with,
The
the
concussion.
concussions, but he is literally one concussion away from needing to
This is
end
fair.
his career. And that was a scary element talking about it, early in the offseason, in preseason where we're discussing draft strategies. One of the biggest things that you brought up was his injury bug and his concussion element. And one big hit takes him out for the year, and you can't put that kind of capital behind him. And I believe honestly, like, you can't draft on or think about a player getting injured. Now if he's consistently every single year getting injured, that's one thing, but like you can't go into the year being like, all right, he's just gonna get injured again. I'm gonna pass on him. Like he's an ultra talented player. There was so much talk about Tyler Show and Shuck or whatever you want to say
Shook.
it. And even Spencer Rattler, early year was they were both talking about how talented Chris Olave is. I mean, we all knew how talented he was, but they were in awe about what kind of player he is on the field, off the field. And why wouldn't you just want to have a player like that on your fantasy football
A-
roster? I mean,
Absolutely.
unbelievable year. Fantastic target share that he received. This was, I think, his highest percentage in target share outside of maybe his rookie or sophomore year. Um, but 9 touchdowns, really, really fantastic year. I don't see any type of regression. I only see progression moving forward.
I agree with you. Would you have any quibbles about having him as your wide receiver one on your team next year?
Yeah, so you know, going into a strategy of basically running back, I do believe Chris Olave most likely will fall as a third or fourth round player
I bet he
next
will.
year.
Hmm.
And yeah, I would have zero problem have him as my wide receiver one because I'm going to bolster up my wide receiver room right after that, just in case of the injury bug happens, right?
Yeah.
So like, you're looking at this and
You're taking
me
lots of shots at wide
yeah,
receiver,
and
right?
you're going to take shots where you're still going to have Cortland Sutton maybe that, I think Cortland Sutton bumps up and we'll talk about him in a little bit. But I mean, you know, there are some other players that have great talent and will produce next year that will not be in the top 12 at wide receivers. And they may finish in the top 12 at wide receivers ADP. So,
Yeah, you're right. I hope that's where Chris Olave falls to, because if that's the case, he's going to be a darling of ours.
yep.
If that's the case, man, when we start doing rankings for that stuff. But unbelievable year. from him and from and good vibes happening with Tyler Shook. So we feel good about the Olave situation. Number seven, we already talked about. That was Devontae. Let's talk about number eight. That's Nico Collins. You drafted Nico as the wide receiver six. He finishes as the wide receiver eight. So okay. So right around there. The problem was it for parts of the year it wasn't so consistent. I mean, there'd be have a great game, then he'd have a decent game, or there'd be a bad game and then a really good game. And I actually think that this year Davis Mills played better than CJ Stroud in the games that he had.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and notwithstanding the most horrific playoff game that you've ever seen in your life, that they would have just won the game if they just would have handed it off every play. But uh, Nico Collins is going to need a little bit better of quarterback play, I think, for me to feel comfortable to draft him, let's say in the upper half of wide receiver ones. Otherwise, he's just going to be a low end wide receiver one, and hopefully he doesn't kill you with consistency if that's how their offense is going to look. They are in a bad division, so the Texans will continue to be very good in that division. So, uh, when this is no knock on his talent, I think he's among the best talents of wide receiver in football, right?
yeah. I mean, he's definitely one of the best talented wide receivers in football.
Big, strong guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and but CJ Stroud needs to figure it out. If he doesn't, honestly, if I was that head coach over there, um, I would have had Davis Mills in the playoff game, like second quarter, or
Bro, let me tell you something. D'Amico Ryans, man. I like D'Amico Ryans a lot. I think
he's very stone faced. You don't know what's going on in his mind, but that game you could tell
he
through
was
his eyes.
so mad.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
because they played such great defense and they had that game. Even with
Right.
all those turnovers, they still could have won that game.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I'm kind of rooting for the Seahawks because the Patriots have not impressed at all this in the postseason. But
We'll
it
see.
is what it is. One of the positives for Nico going next year is no matter what the quarterback situation is, he is by far and away like he is the target. He is the guy. He is 100% the guy. He's not going to be competing with targets from Christian Kirk or something. Although we did like what we saw in spurts from Jaden Higgins. But we're not afraid of Dalton Schultz. We'll see how they handle it for next year. I
No.
can't imagine being confident in Nico as a top half wide receiver one. We'll see. Let's talk about number nine, Tommy, and I think we might have differing opinions on him for next year. So finishing at number nine is Cortland Sutton. You drafted him as the wide receiver 21. So again, great value. Here's another one of these guys that we were excited about coming into this year. Um, so the thing is, like Bo Nix loves him. Like he just hyper targets him. He goes for it. But we started to see some of these young, super talented wide receivers starting to take off as the year went on. Rich Franklin, Pat Bryant, Marvin Mims. And for that reason, and now Cortland Sutton he's going to be 31 next year or 32. I don't think this train continues next year.
Cortland Sutton, he's 30 years old. He's gonna be 31.
31 next year.
Yeah. I think that it's gonna start slowing down. The Oregon connection of Troy
There
Franklin
it
and
is.
yeah, I think that's what starts picking up. Cortland Sutton is still gonna have some value, but he will not finish in the top 12 next year. He might not even finish in the top 24.
Oh, so
I
then
think
we are of the same opinion
I
then.
think
Yeah.
he is going to be a fantastic role player for the young offense out there. Sean Payton's going to still find his way to get him in there. But I think you got probably one of the best years for Cortland Sutton, and that's about it.
Yeah, the past 2 years were unbelievable for Cortland Sutton, but I think that this might be
He
where the
was a
train
player that
ends.
we were very, very high on this year, the start of the season, and he did obviously have a very, very nice return on investment.
Yep. Let's talk about number 10. That's AJ Brown. He finished as the wide receiver 10. You drafted him as the wide receiver 10. But,
But it
at,
was not pretty
it
because he
was
was the wide receiver 62 early in the year.
it was not good. It got better towards the latter half of the year, but even then, like the problem was the inconsistency. And we had this conversation all year about the whatever Philadelphia is doing on offense. Like there were some games where it was just like they could kind of just push their way, a little screen pass, maybe Saquon gets into the end zone, and then that's the end of the game, partially because their defense is so good.
Mhm.
Um, I think AJ Brown is I also think that he lost a step personally on top of all his other shenanigans and books and stuff.
Possibly.
Um, next year I can imagine it not being anywhere near in the same ballpark. I mean, is he even on the Eagles next year?
I don't think so. And honestly, I felt really good about having him this year. I traded Emeka Buka away
That's a great
after
trade right for the second half.
after week 10, after Emeka Buka's 20.5 game against New England. I traded him for AJ Brown based on the rest of the season, and AJ Brown after week 10 had 8.4 week 11, but then after that 21, 30, 13, 11, 14 points. So he got you that what you needed. He was getting a crazy amount of targets. And I think that's where he was potentially a league winner if you made a move like that for some players that were performing early and then you transitioned that way. But I think AJ Brown is not going to be a Philadelphia Eagle next year. I think that they do need to move away, maybe get a different opportunity in there. Maybe AJ Brown goes to Buffalo and Pickens goes to the Eagles. Maybe
Maybe. I mean,
little swapperoo.
we'll see. We'll see. That would be interesting. But if that's the best they could do in Buffalo, I don't think AJ Brown is the most talented guy anymore. But
I think he's still fairly talented. I mean, he's 28 years old. He'll be 29 next year, so he still has another year, 2 years left under his belt, I believe. He also is he's a big guy, and he's slightly elusive. He's not like DK Metcalf, his counterpart. I think DK has more agility, a little bit more elusive, but AJ Brown is a bruiser. And he does command the ball, and he does, people respect him when he has it. So
okay. Well, we'll see what before we can make any assessments on him, we'll see what team he's on. I'm sure he'll come up during the free agent, craziness day that happens.
yeah,
Number 11 we talked about that was Jameson. And let's talk about number 12. This is gonna be the one that annoys you. So
it does. It annoys me so bad.
finishing in the top 12, number 12, Zay Flowers. You drafted him as the wide receiver 27, so he returned good value to you, right?
Mm. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. How would you describe his season?
Did not think he was going to finish in the top 12.
Right. I think he's the pinnacle of inconsistency. I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
Look
he
at these
is.
scores. I mean, this is
I mean,
crazy.
what brought him into the top 12 was literally his final 14, 15, 16, 17 weeks. Like
And
that's
and
what brought him
and,
in.
and week one.
And week one. Because
Yeah.
he had 24 points week one.
I
But
would
I just don't see him being somebody that I could say, hey, I feel really good. Zay Flowers being my wide receiver one. Because I
oh
tell you something
never.
right now, play teams that had Zay Flowers as wide receiver one or even wide receiver two, they didn't even make the playoffs.
Maybe you got a lead after week one and then that was it. Yeah, I agree. It wasn't good. And then look, week 13, negative points. Um, I think what Zay
On
Flowers
7 targets.
I know. I think what Zay Flowers represents is uh remember what we said. Like you have a guy like Jamison Williams who's that's boom bust. And when the
You,
boom
you
when the
you
booms
do
hit, they're boom, you
you
know?
do remember early in the season, you were all about Zay. You were always saying, "What do I say?" You were all about Zay Flowers, all
I wa-
about him.
no, I was not.
You love Zay Flowers.
No, I don't. What I was saying is that I think that recognizing that the floor can be very low. I was saying that, listen, from a boom bust perspective, it felt like for a while that the floor was higher. Let's put it that way. And he really didn't hit a complete zero until week 13. I mean, he was, in the neighborhood of like, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points on the worst case. I mean, look, after the bye, they had the bye in week 7, 10 points, 8 points, 10 points, 9 points, 9 points. That's fine. Like you could live with that. It's not like maybe not as your wide receiver one, but you could live with that. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
I was just commenting on like the floor version of him. But I agree with you. There's not a chance on this planet I would be okay with somebody like him as a wide receiver one. And we already talked about it. Like we think Baltimore is not going to be particularly good next year. So why would I be investing in him? You know? So it depends how
I
far he falls, but
yeah,
he's a name.
yeah. I mean, if he falls to the fifth or sixth round, I may take him as my wide receiver three, but I probably won't play him.
You never want to play us on principle. What do you make of the Isaiah Likely nonsense going on this offseason?
What's going on?
All the cryptic stuff and the postings and this and that. The rumor mill is that Isaiah Likely goes to Kansas City. That's the rumor mill.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that means Travis Kelce's completely out. He's done.
You and I could both hope,
Yeah,
that
I really hope so.
he's way past the expiration date there. Yeah. But I bring it up to mention that, you know, Zay Flowers is what he's going to continue to be competing with Mark Andrews and whatever else there for targets in Baltimore. Notwithstanding the fact that now John Harbaugh is no longer there, we don't know what the offense is going to look like. So, the level of trepidation that we'll be having for him next year. So maybe this is the last year that he's even remotely in the top, relevant amount of names.
Yeah.
But there we go. That is the top 12. We'll cover 13 to 24, and then we'll be covering 25 to 36.
I want to
36.
I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this
Sure.
before we close this off.
Sure.
Next year, a name that's not inside the top 12. Who do you think finishes inside the top 12?
I guess an easy name to pick would be like Justin Jefferson, right? Something like that.
I'm talking about not such an easy name. I'll give you mine
Okay.
if you want me to go first.
Sure, go for it.
I think Jacoby Myers finishes inside the top 10 next year.
That is quite the call. Can I ask you something? Who's the best wide receiver in Jacksonville?
Uh,
Best talented, most talented.
Most talented wide receiver in Jacksonville is Brian Thomas Jr. The best route runner, the best player for that for Trevor Lawrence is Jacoby Myers.
I could make the claim that the best receiver is Parker Washington. Like
Oh,
he's great.
okay, yeah. I mean, they have really good wide receivers there, like just overall,
Oh yeah,
right? They have really good wide receivers throughout the entire element of that team. I think it's just Parker Washington is just a product of being open and being single covered
maybe.
by the third or fourth, you know, fourth guy that basically covering him.
I was just impressed with how he looked.
Sometimes a linebacker covering him. So I think I think it was just a product of the situation.
Well, I think it's a bold prediction, and we like Jacoby Myers. We're pro Jacoby Myers show here, so I'm not against it. I could see Ted McMillan finishing in the top 10 personally. Um,
I mean, Ted McMillan was number 14, so you have to go dig a little deeper than that.
I mean, listen, I'm giving you names. I'm not going to. I mean, I could say Garrett Wilson too, but then I'd have to
This
throw
is
up
this is this
watching the quarterback play.
this will be a slightly ballsy one, and I think Troy Franklin finishes in the top 12.
He just might. I mean, we like Troy Franklin too.
Yep.
Pa- Let me ask you this: of the names that we're looking at, who do you think takes the biggest fall?
1 through 12, I think the biggest fall is going to be Zay Flowers. I think there, but like
I think Cortland Sutton. Yeah.
if I have to take another person outside of that, I think the biggest fall, depending on situation, will be Puka Nacua.
Well, yeah, depending on the situation. You think Malik Neighbors finishes in the top 12 next year?
Only one would hope, but you know what the thing is, not everybody can finish in the top 12. That's the biggest thing, right?
I
So,
know, I know. We're gonna have a fun time doing rankings for all
yeah.
that.
I think honestly, going into next year, we're going to see a lot of talent out there. We're going to feel really good about a lot of guys, and I think a lot of guys can produce because this is turning back into the NFL is really atypically turning back into a offensive friendly game. And I think that there's going to just be a lot of points scored next year. There's a lot of talent out there, a lot more chemistry, better quarterback play outside of Cleveland. Um, a lot of good quarterback play that's gonna be happening next year, and I think that we'll see a lot of points scored.
Yeah, and it's actually a good, nice segue that you mentioned that, because this is something you and I say all the time. And again, we had part of one of our videos that went viral or whatever. What you just said is the key. If you have a lot of wide receivers who are doing really well and that are valuable, and you have a lot of good options, it's supply and demand. Therefore, each individual wide receiver unto themselves isn't as valuable compared with others. Supply and demand. Therefore, because there's a scarcity of dominant running backs, that's why they are so much more valuable. So you need to go get yourself those valuable running backs. It's why we tell you to hit them earlier and often
Yep.
in the draft. Unless you're completely going a no running back strategy, which is like you're structuring your team different, that's fine. But generally speaking, that's why that works. It's because of supply and demand. And what Tommy just said is case in point to that situation. So, and the guys that we read off today should be evidence of that. I mean, we mentioned how many of these guys did we mention that were like later round darlings that just ended up in the top 12 at
It
Pickens
happens every year in fantasy
all the
football.
time. Yeah. And
And
now,
I'll give everybody a little breaking news. Wandell Robinson is number 13,
right, we'll get to him too.
and we'll
Yeah.
talk about him next week.
Absolutely. So there we go. That's our show. Closing thoughts, Mr. Lang?
Yeah, if we truly appreciate everybody that takes the time to watch our video. So if you could please like, share, and subscribe, we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much. We're glad to be back. Go Patriots.
Let's go, Seahawks.